Welcome yet again to another WrestleMania debates. This time, we're gonna go back to where it all begins. Again, WrestleMania 20, Madison Square Garden. Attendance is 20,000, which is actually a lot lower than WrestleMania 19. But you gotta keep this in mind: the Garden doesn't hold a lot of people. It was like you're in there, you're in there. That's why the Madison Square Garden tickets were like probably the most expensive tickets ever. But the buy rate itself was actually pretty good. It made 1 million, which is more than you could say from WrestleMania 19, which that buy rate was 5,600. It's still a good number, but it's not 1 million. So, it made you question whether or not um the right headliners were Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit. One of the biggest moments that people remember from WrestleMania 20, or at least the people who got lucky enough to remember it before the obvious. Um, Eddie and Chris Benoit were ended the show with them hugging their family, them hugging each other, and having their epic big moment. It was a great moment. It was a great markout moment for us. And this WrestleMania, I'm gonna be really honest, it's a little overrated. I don't think it was bad. I don't think it was great. I just thought it was a little overhyped. Some people say it's one of the greatest WrestleManias of all time, and I don't see it. So I think it had a lot of great moments, such as The Rock and Sock reuniting. John Cena was created on this show. Um, the Victoria Molly Holly storyline where Molly Holly ends up getting her head shaved. Those were little cool moments. Oh, and of course, Christian making out with Trish Stratus. Like, we had good moments in there, but there was a lot of bad moments. In there. For starters, I mean the obvious one out of the way, Goldberg versus Brock Lesnar. That just brought the showdown. A lot of people hate the Undertaker and Kane match. I don't hate it. I do not hate the match. I don't think it was a great match, but I thought it did its purpose of just bringing in the dead man, Kane being scared. Undertaker takes a few punches, beats him 1, 2, 3. Undertaker wins. That's really what the match should have been. So I don't hate it for that. But you did have the matches that you needed to be good, and you had the matches that needed to be. Back in the day, WrestleMania, they knew how to like put together a card. Like they knew which matches needed to go longer and they knew which match needed to be shorter. But the biggest problem with this WrestleMania is that the show itself was long as shit. That we could all agree was pretty dumb. But one of the most important things about WrestleManias in general is where do we go from after WrestleMania? And normally, the world champion is the leader and the person in charge of what's next to come for the rest of 2004 at the time. And because we had the brand split, we had to build up new stars, and those people ended up being Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit, two best friends, um, going at um, going head to head against uh, probably the two best matches of the show, honestly. Eddie Guerrero, after beating Brock Lesnar from after Goldberg screwed him over, he defended the belt against Kurt Angle. It really felt like they had nothing for Kurt Angle or Eddie. They just needed them in the card. So they gave us this. It was a good match. Don't get me wrong. Um, but you could tell that, out of all the WWE championship matches we've gotten over the years, this is definitely the weakest up to this point. Just based on name and name quality. There were some other ones that were not as great. Like obviously, we had Sid Vicious versus the Undertaker. That was but you understand why that was the championship match. And this is no discredit to Eddie Guerrero and Kurt Angle. I think they're both great main event superstars. Um, but they weren't the big names like the previous ones. And I think that's what was important about this WrestleMania. that this WrestleMania needed to build up some new stars. That is the most important thing that this card should have done. Uh, like I mentioned, they made John Cena into a star. They made Christian into a very decent heel, I should say. I don't know. Christian between around this time was a great, solid mid card heel. Then he became. I hated 2011 Christian. I think he had great matches with Randy Orton, but he was an annoying ass heel. That's my personal take on it. And then we had the obvious one, Shawn Michaels, Triple H, Chris Benoit, the greatest triple threat match of all time to some people. And the story itself was great. It was built like a WrestleMania main event. Triple H and Shawn Michaels constantly had beef, but we did not want to see Shawn Michaels and Triple H at WrestleMania. We could all agree we didn't want to watch that one-on-one match again after so many chances. So they added Chris Benoit, and matter of fact, Chris Benoit made history. Obviously, we can't remember this history because it's Chris Benoit, but he was the first man to uh, switch brands in the process of winning the Royal Rumble. Because normally he was at the time he was a SmackDown guy, so naturally in your head he went to he was gonna go face on the WWE champion, but he said nope, I'm going to Raw. Screw you guys, I'm going to Raw. Anyone catch that reference? Um, So, Chris Benoit, Shawn Michaels, and Triple H, that triple threat match was set. It was a fantastic match, a great just showcase of all three competitors, showing that Triple H could be a good wrestler at the time after burying so many people. But I gotta be honest, I'm a little disappointed with where these guys ended up at next year's WrestleMania, that being WrestleMania 21. Um, and this is no discredit to WrestleMania 21. I actually love WrestleMania 21, but this buy rate had 1 million as well, and the attendance was 20,193, around the same range as MSG, and this took place in Los Angeles Staples Center. I've been to that arena. It is a decent amount of people that could get in there. That's an average score of people that could be in there. Um, So, where were Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero? Well, believe it or not, they were the first two matches on the show. Uh, Eddie lost to Rey Mysterio in a singles match after they both became tag team champs. It was tag team champion versus tag team champion. Great match. Never gonna discredit the work these guys have done. These guys were great. And Chris Benoit was part of the very first ever Money in a Bank ladder match. Now, I gotta admit that this um showed me what was to come um for the future of the business. This really did show me that, because at WrestleMania 21 we also got Batista and John Cena winning the world titles, having a similar moment to Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit. And people seem to remember John Cena and Batista more than Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit winning the world titles. Not because of, I mean, one of the biggest ones has to be what Benoit did, obviously. But when the following year, Batista got injured, unfortunately, but John Cena was still in the main event picture. And then when Batista came back at Mania 23, he was also in the world title picture. So there was ways to give you a definite decision as to who it was truly over in the WWE. This was a test, and it definitely showed me a lot of changes, because think about this: the person uh, that John Cena beat for the very first time to win his first ever WWE Championship was JBL. JBL the previous year was in the U.S. title picture. Um, Oddly enough, against Chris Benoit. And why am I bringing this up? Because around this time, we weren't sure whether or not to keep people in the world title picture or not. I remember back in the day. I mean, I'm gonna sound like an old person, but back in the day, when you were the world champion, when you won that world title, you were gonna stay in the world title picture. It was rare for you to go to the mid card division or the tag team division. Some names that come to mind are the Iron Sheik and Kane, but both of those title reigns lasted less than a week, honestly. Iron Sheik lasted a little bit longer than Kane. Kane only lasted one night as world champion. So, but it was rare to see world champions go back down. There was rumors that before Eddie died, he was supposed to come back to the world title picture and face against Shawn Michaels, but we'll never know. And then obviously with the Benoit thing, uh, keep in mind Benoit was the headliner of WrestleMania 20. Then little by little, you could tell he was just going lower and lower and lower to the card. He was gonna make a big comeback in ECW, um, but of course, what happened happened, and it really does upset me knowing that some people just never stayed into the upper top talent card. And here's another one that sticks out: RVD and Booker T, two people who Triple H buried uh, at the time. They took forever to put the world title on these guys. So in 2002, they were the hottest things on Raw, and then they didn't get their world titles until 2006 of all times, which is very upsetting. And you could tell that the business didn't know who to keep in the top. It was like, you haven't done anything. Well, give me this guy. Let's put him the world title. We're dropping buy rates. Oh, John Cena, listen, man, you brought some good ratings. Look, take the world title, get it off of this upper talent. So it was hard with, I mean, you could debate that it was two brands, but here's one of the biggest reasons why I think that um, Eddie and Benoit became world champions in the first place. And that is, there was nobody. There was nobody to be at the top around this point. The Rock was Hollywood. I guarantee you, if The Rock didn't leave, I guarantee you The Rock would have been in that main event of WrestleMania 20 against whoever. Whether it was Triple H again, whether it was Shawn Michaels for the first time ever, whether they were had the balls to push Goldberg and then have The Rock beat him. They they had a different view. I could tell that they wanted something else. But they needed to think quick and they needed to think fast. And I personally think, as a fan, I love that moment of Benoit and Eddie winning, and they really did deserve it. They have busted their ass off on SmackDown. They were some of the highlights of 2002, part of the SmackDown 6. In 2003, they helped develop the United States Championship. They did the hardest work ever, and they deserve to be world champions. But they also deserve to stay in that world title picture. I fucking hate that the company constantly gives people the world title and then they lose it and then they're like back to normal. That's why I was afraid when Drew McIntyre lost the WWE Championship. I was afraid that he was gonna go right back down to maybe fight for the US belt or something like that. And I guarantee you this is gonna be very upsetting to hear to all the AEW fans. But if Kenny Omega does not bring in good ratings, if he was like your stereotypical indie guy, I guarantee you, if Kenny Omega lost that AEW World Title, that he just would have been fighting for the TNT Championship, or he would have been in the tag team with somebody else. Luckily, AEW doesn't have to worry about two brand splits. And yeah, like I said, the brand split itself is definitely one of the biggest causes of all of this, and it really is upsetting. So taking away what Benoit did, and because I really am trying to avoid that conversation right now. I don't want to make it into a big rant, but I really did think that if they were gonna put the world titles on them, WWE, Vince McMahon, whoever should have stayed confident with these guys and keep them in the top main event tier spot. It makes no sense for giving someone the world title and then just dropping them down. So I personally believe that these two were ready for the main event. WWE, on the other hand, was not that quite ready. That's it for my WrestleMania debates. If you thought this one was controversial, wait till you get to the next episode, and that will be me discussing about WrestleMania 23, the Battle of the Billionaires. Who truly deserved to be in that match? Who deserved to be on Donald Trump's side, and who deserved to be on Vince McMahon's side? Find out in the next episode of WrestleMania Debates. It's me, the ALEXX Prince. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. And until then, I'm out.